Hello everybody, Toreno here. Welcome back to another episode of War Thunder. As you can see in the background, or you can see in the picture, this is the British planned tech tree, or planned vehicles for the British tech tree. These were released by Gaijin about a year ago, and I did a little mini-series on them, the Future Tech Tree Analysis series. Where basically I looked at the vehicles that were planned to be released, the ones in orange, and I sort of discussed information about them, which ones I thought would be prioritised for the nations, and just, generally gave information about them. That was about a year ago, and I've decided to go back over these future tech trees so that we can see which vehicles have actually been added, which nations have sort of got the most out of the tech trees, which ones have got the most vehicles over the last year, and where I think the priority should be for the next year, or where I think Gaijin will be added vehicles mostly in the next year. So we're actually going to start off with the American tank tech tree. I didn't look at tanks last year, but this part of the episode should be pretty quick. I've actually highlighted them in white, or I've put the pictures in paint and inverted the colour, and they represent the vehicles that have been added. And as you can see on the American tech tree, basically all of them have been added. The M4A3E8 I'm a little unsure on, because we've got an M4A3 in-game, and I'm pretty sure it's sometimes known as the E8. I know in World of Tanks it's known as the E8, and so I'm not sure if I think that's been added into the game, but they haven't called it that, so I've sort of put a question mark there in case I'm wrong about it. So America's basically got all of the tanks it was promised, except for possibly one, and again that's possibly where I'm mistaken. If we go to the German tech tree, it's a similar story. They've basically got all of the vehicles they were promised, except for three of them: the Stug 3C, Stug 3G, and the Stug 4. Now, the 3C is basically a Stug A, but with a different gunner viewport, because basically it was a bit of a shot trap, so that was redesigned, that flaw was removed. So not really much of a difference between the A and the C. The G seems to be what we've got in the game already, but without side skirts, so a little less armoured. And the Stug 4 is basically a Stug 3, but on a Panzer 4 chassis rather than a Panzer 3. So Germany's got basically all the vehicles it was promised, except for a few minor variants that wouldn't really affect the game that much. And of course they've got vehicles they weren't promised, the Mouse and the Leopard, for example. And if we move over to the Russian tech tree, similar story. Basically all the vehicles they were promised, plus a few extra ones. And, a few that they haven't received yet. The Su-76, which is basically what we've got in game already, but with a worse engine. The T-40, which is a bit like the M2A2, is an amphibious tank armed only with a machine gun. The BT-7A, which is basically a BT-7 with a 76mm howitzer, possibly replaced by the T-26-4, which was released in one of the patches not long ago. And the BT-7M, which is basically a BT-7 with better engines and 3 machine guns, including one on the where the commander is, so for anti-aircraft work. So a tiny bit more firepower against an aircraft and better engines. Now, once I went through the tech trees, I actually added which vehicles have been added into the game into a Excel spreadsheet. Red is the Russians, the grey is Germans, and the blue is the Americans. This is from patch 1.41 onwards. You can see the number of vehicles that have been added, 78 in 0.41, 17 in 0.43, 39 in 0.45, 9 in 0.47, 0.49 had 18, and 9 in 0.51. And I've also added up which ones were regular, which ones were premium, and which nation received the most vehicles. And also the total, 170, which is actually more than all the aircraft added in the last year. But you can see here, the country that's got the most vehicles in general is Russia, 63. But you can see that the country that's got the most vehicles that you don't have to pay for, regular vehicles, non-premium, is Germany. While Russia got the most premium, 17 compared to Germany's 12, while Germany got 49 regular compared to Russia's 46. America's come third, but again, they came in like 2 patches later, so it's not really surprising they've got a lot less, a few less than the Germans and Russians. But, like I said, I think Germany has sort of come out better on the amount of vehicles added, because, like I said, you don't have to pay money for regular vehicles, actual money, whereas with premium you will. So Russia actually has a lot more premium vehicles in its tech tree, which, you can't actually get access to without paying real money. Whereas Germany, you can access more of the vehicles, just by playing in the game. And again, America's only got a few premiums, not that many. So again, I'd say, well, Russia's got the most vehicles, but Germany's got the most you can actually access without paying money. Where do I think they're focused next? Probably on either the really low tier vehicles, like tier 1 or 2, or possibly on the 1960s vehicles, which they've only added 3 vehicles in, the Leopard 1, M60 and the T10M. Although we've also got to remember Britain's going to be getting tanks in, I think, at the end of this year, so there may be a bit of a slowdown as they start to focus on British tanks, but I think that's where they're going to focus with the German, Russian and American tanks, the very high tier 1960s tanks and the very low tier tanks. Now, moving on from tanks, we're going to the aircraft planned tech trees, which is what my videos last year actually dealt with, and we're starting off with the Soviet Union. And they weren't actually meant to receive all that many vehicles, only something like 14 or so, mainly Yakolev fighters, 1 I-16, 2 attackers and a few long-range and frontline bombers. And what they actually got was, well, they got 2 of the Yakolev fighters, they got the I-16 Type 5, they got both of the attackers, and 1 frontline bomber, the L-28. So they got a few aircraft, but if you go to the Excel spreadsheet, you can see, well, it looks a bit deceptive. It's a bit deceptive. It looks like they got the second most amount of vehicles, and what they did overall, just behind Britain. But if you go to regular fighters, they haven't actually had many. Out of 19 vehicles, only 8 of them were actually regular, so less than half were regular vehicles. And they didn't get any for patch 1.51. They got 4 of their vehicles in patch 1.43, and since then, just 1 or 2. The I-16 Type 10, which wasn't on the list, the R2 1941, which I think is the R2-1 on the list, the 37mm R2, the 1943 R2, which wasn't on the list as well. So they've just mainly got rehashes of, R2s and I-16s, and, they've only had the R-28 and the Yak 1 and 9 are really the only, really new aircraft. The rest are just sort of variants of existing aircraft. If we go to premium, you can see they've got quite a lot of premium, 5 premiums. One was a P-47D, and then a Hurricane Mark 2B, a Yak 3, a Yak 9M, and an LA-7. And if we go to remodels, 6, they've got more remodels than they have of actual new aircraft, or new premium aircraft. An LA-5FN, R2, Yak 9 K&T, and then 2 more R2s. So Russia hasn't actually done all that well. Again, tanks kind of skew this result a little bit, but they've just mainly got premium aircraft, and perhaps that's because their tech tree is the most complete. Maybe there aren't that many to add, but then when you remember, if you go back to the tech tree, they've got all the long-range bombers, they've got the MBR-2 flying boat, they've got the Tu-14, they've got the Yak-30, Yak-7, Yak-9B. Maybe they've just shifted priority to tanks for the moment, but some of these aircraft would be quite easy. Well, it would be nice to have them. The Tu-4 shouldn't be hard to add because it's basically it's very similar to the B-29. It was a few B-29s crashed in Russia, and they sort of copied it. Not an exact copy. They sort of did fit it for their own purposes. It's a kind of a shame they haven't added some more vehicles for Russia. And it also sort of, it's kind of funny because everyone sort of always complains Russia gets all these vehicles, but they haven't actually got that many new vehicles in quite a while. Now, moving on from the Soviet Union's tech tree, we're going to the American tech tree. Now, the American tech tree or planned tech tree had about 45 vehicles, and most of these were fighters and attackers, plus a few really low tier and very high tier bombers. And you can see here I've highlighted the ones that have been added. The ones who have only half highlighted the box is they've added a vehicle in, but not the variant they said they would add. For example, with the P-51, they added the P-51A, not the P-51B. So I've highlighted the lowest tier P-51 there. But, obviously they didn't add the B in, so I'm just half highlighting it. And you can see America got sort of equal amounts of vehicles. It got 2 bombers, it got 2 naval fighters, it got 1 army fighter, 2 attackers, and one Navy bomber plus torpedo bomber. So mostly equal, two or one in each of the categories. However, it does seem a bit odd because, well, the B-29 was already created. They just didn't release it for a very long time. They'd basically finished it for quite a bit before they released it, but they didn't know how. They thought it was going to wreck the balance of the game because there was nothing that could take down the B-29. But I'm sort of surprised they didn't focus on fighters. Now, they did add a few vehicles that aren't actually on this list. For example, the B-57B, which is similar, but it has actual guns on it, like gun pods. But I'm surprised they didn't focus on fighters. They seem to have, they have a little bit for the naval tech tree, but they seem to have focused mainly on bombers. The B-29, B-57A and B, and, a few attackers. There's only really been a few fighters added into the game. Now, I've done something similar with the Excel spreadsheet, but for the aircraft. And you can see here, where's the American tech tree? Like I said, got a bomber, a fighter, two bombers, attacker, a fighter, attacker. It's just mainly focused on attackers rather than actual fighters, which is odd because fighters is the thing America really needs and what they put on their planned tech tree the most. So where do I think they're going to focus, or where I hope they're going to focus? Bearing in mind they now have got tanks to look at as well. Well, I hope they focus on fighters, which is something I'm pretty sure I said last year. America really needs mid-tier and high-tier fighters. It's good they've got their bombers finally, but they really, really do need fighters. Possibly a few attackers, but like the A-20s they said they were going to add, but really it's the fighters they need, especially the P-51s and P-38s. The P-40 is it's a massively iconic aircraft, and they've only got one variant, which was in the game when it was sort of released. Going back to the Excel spreadsheet, you can actually see overall, including remodels, premiums, and new aircraft, America got 17 aircraft, which is quite a lot. It's the second most or third most amount of aircraft, just behind Britain and Russia. If you actually look at just regular aircraft, so no premium or remodeling, where is it? It actually got 9, which again is the third most out of all the nations, except this time second place is Japan. If we go with just premiums, America's actually tied second with Germany. And if we go with remodels, America got the most remodels, which seems odd that they're remodelling aircraft when they still need to add massive amounts of new aircraft. Although, to be fair, the F2A 3 and 1 and the premium model are very similar, so it's possible they haven't actually been focusing on remodelling. It's just they had 3 very similar aircraft, so it wasn't much effort to get all of them done at once. But we move on to the next tech tree, which is Britain. As you can see here, or we go to the unaltered version, you can see here they were mostly meant to be getting Royal Navy aircraft, and quite a lot of bombers and twin-engine fighters. Very few fighters, only 4 fighters on this list. But yeah, like I said, just mainly fleet air arm naval aircraft, bombers, especially mid-tier, and twin-engine fighters. Now, what they actually got, well, they did actually get most of their fleet air arm aircraft. Again, there's a few that weren't the same variant as shown on the tech tree. For example, the Seafire, we've got the Mark 47 rather than the 45. The Attacker FB is the Mark 1 rather than the 2 as shown on here. But they got most of their fleet air arm aircraft. They got half their fighters, the Venom FB4 and the Hurricane Mark 4. And they got a few bombers. They got the Canberra B Mark 2 and they got the B Mark 6 as well, which is like the B-57B. It's got gun pods. And the Lancaster Mark 1, which is basically a Lancaster Mark 3, but they gave 50 caliber machine guns a 50 caliber tail machine gun to the Mark 3 and kept the Mark 1 as sort of similar to the version that was already in the game, but I think with slightly different bomb loads and engines. Now, if we go back to the Excel spreadsheet and look at how many vehicles Britain actually got, they actually got the most out of all of the nations of War Thunder, if you include premiums and remodels. They got 20, although most of that does seem to have come from patch 1.49, where they got the fleet air arm added into the game. Patch 1.47, before that, they didn't actually get a single aircraft. But 20 vehicles puts them in first place, with Russia in second. If we go to just regular vehicles, again, they got 15, more than any other nation except for, well, Japan got 13. Basically, they got a lot more vehicles than anybody else in the game. They also got a decent amount of premiums. Well, they're tied third for last. They're tied third. So they got the least out of any other nation except Japan. But still, 3 premiums is pretty good. And if we go to remodels, well, they didn't actually get that many remodels. They got 2 remodels, which are both Hurricanes. So Britain's actually done very well in the last year. They've got the most vehicles out of any nation, and it's mostly regular vehicles, so vehicles you can actually get without having to pay real money. So Britain has done very well in the last year. I do hope they're sort of will start focusing on tier 3 bombers or mid-tier bombers and twin-engine fighters. Britain really does need those sort of aircraft. At the moment, it just sort of goes to the, it's just mainly Wellingtons and Lancasters, and, we all know how they perform in game. So I do hope they start focusing on mid-tier bombers, and plus maybe a few twin-engine fighters and the Hawker Hunter. That's been promised for a little while now, and it hasn't been added into the game, so I hope they add that soon. Now, going back to the tech tree, and we've got the German planned tech tree, and really they were they were planned to get a bit of everything. A few fighters, a few heavy fighters, twin-engine fighters, a few bombers. Not so many attackers, but, still a decent amount. So what did they actually get in the end? Well, they got a sort of a bit of everything, really. They only got 1 heavy fighter, but it was the Halton 229, so very good. They got a few fighters, single-engine fighters. They got the low-tier BF-109. They got the BF-109 G14, Focke-Wulf 190. They got quite a few bombers. The Arado with the guns on it. The C3, the Focke-Wulf 200, they got the C1 rather than the C3 or 4 as shown on here. The C1's one of the early variants with not very good bomb load or defensive armament, so sort of not the greatest bomber in the world. And the Dornier 17E, which is a low tier bomber. So they did okay, but if you go to the Excel spreadsheet, you can sort of see they actually got the least out of all the nations. They got 14. Japan got 16, but again, the R2Y2's potentially skewed that result. But still, they got the least aircraft out of any nation, which is kind of disappointing. I mean, I know we have to remember they did get tanks, so that does kind of make up for it a little bit. But it's still, a bit. It would have been nice for them to get more planes. Again, if we break it down into regular remodels and premiums, if we go to regular. You can see they only got 7, so only half of their aircraft were actually regular aircraft. They didn't actually get any regular in patch 1.45, and they've only been getting 2 or 1 in each patch since 0.43, really. If you go to premium, they haven't actually had that many premiums, only 4, and 3 of them were in patch 1.43. And if we go to remodels, again, only 2 or 3 remodels, 1 for the Arado 234B2, and 2 for the BF-109 E1 and E3. Again, 2 similar aircraft, so probably wasn't hard to just get them both done while they were doing one of them. So it's good they did get some, some aircraft, but they got the least out of all the nations. Again, they did get the most regular tanks, that kind of makes up for it. But I hope they will get a few new aircraft. Where do I think their focus, or where do I hope their focus? It would be nice for them to focus on some of the higher tier vehicles. The Dornier 335, the HE219, a high tier bomber, the HE177 or something. German bombers actually have one of the best bomb loads in the game, but they have very bad defensive armament, so it would be good to get some sort of near B-17 equivalent. I mean, it won't be the same. It won't have as good defensive armament or armour, I doubt, but the HE177 would be the nearest equivalent. Would be good to get maybe one of the low tier attackers like the HS123. But yeah, would be nice for them to get some new aircraft. Like I said, they didn't do awful in this year, but they did get the least amount of aircraft, so it would be nice for them to get a few more. Now, the next tech tree we're looking at is the Japanese tech tree, which is split into the Japanese Army and the Japanese Navy. And it seems the Japanese Army was slated to get the most vehicles. Quite a lot of twin-engine bombers, twin-engine fighters, a lot of Army fighters. The Ki-32 and 51 which are sort of like close attack aircraft. Japanese Navy, it was going to get a few aircraft, mainly, it's not actually many carrier aircraft. I mean, mainly dive bombers and, long-range bombers and land-based fighters. What did they actually get? Well, they got quite a few army fighters. They got 3 army fighters. They got a twin-engine bomber. The Japanese Navy actually got quite a lot. They got all the land-based J2M fighters. They got the R2Y2 high-speed bombers, which are basically used as high-tier jet fighters. They got the J7W1, the JAN1, or possibly the Kitsuka. They're both similar aircraft, so I don't know who to credit for that aircraft, but it was on the Japanese naval lineup, so I credited it to the Japanese. And if we go to the Excel spreadsheet, you can see that Japan got almost the least amount of aircraft. Again, only Germany got less than them, but again, the R2Y2s kind of skew it a little bit, because they're all very, very similar aircraft, only with minor differences in engine, which, then again, maybe I'm being a bit unfair, because you could probably say it of a lot of other aircraft. And they've done quite well patch-wise. They've never got less than, well, they had one premium aircraft in patch 1.47, but since then they've always had at least 2 aircraft, 3 in patch 1.51 and 8 in patch 1.43. And again, we can break it down into regular, remodel, or premium aircraft, and you can see 13 regular aircraft out of 16, so they haven't actually got that many premium or remodels. I don't think, they haven't had any remodels. You can see they've mostly got regular aircraft, which is quite good. You don't have to spend actual money on it. Premium, again, only a few premiums, one B-17, a J2M4 and a J2M5, and they've all, the J2M5 they also got a regular version of, so that's not really unfair. And the J2M4 isn't even on the release list, so that's an extra aircraft. And like I said, remodels, haven't had any remodels, which is kind of unfortunate, but, can't really do much about that. So Japan's done okay, I suppose. It's mostly regular aircraft, even if they haven't actually got that many overall. Where do I like Gaijin, or where do I think Gaijin should focus? It would be nice for them to get some more carrier aircraft. At the moment, they've just focused on land-based aircraft. It would be good to maybe get a few more low-tier bombers, or they can't really do much else for high-tier, so maybe the G3M2 or some different variants of the G4Ms. It would be nice to get the H8K finally. Like I said, just carrier aircraft is where they really need to focus, and maybe a few twin-engine fighters or high-tier army fighters. But anyway, that's it for today's episode. It was good to go back and see how War Thunder has changed, or, how it was planned to be last year and how it's actually turned out. See which nations have benefited the most, got the most vehicles. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the episode. Leave a like if you did. Subscribe if you like these sorts of videos. Leave feedback, could always do with more feedback. Put in the comments which vehicles you think Gaijin should add, or where you think they should focus their efforts on. It'd be good to hear your opinions and comments. But anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.